Ethan Harrison was always the most confident person in the room. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the United States, he was a powerful figure, known for his wealth, success, and influence. At 35 years old, his life seemed perfect. He lived in mansions, drove sports cars, and was surrounded by people who constantly flattered him. Ethan was used to winning, whether it was in business or in life. For him, the world was a game of power, and he was always the one who came out on top. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan found himself in an unlikely place, a local McDonald's. It wasn't the sort of spot someone like him would usually visit. However, Ethan didn't mind. He was with a few of his friends, and they had decided to go there for fun. They liked to joke about pretending to live like ordinary people, something that amused them. Sitting around a table in the back of the restaurant, his friends chatted casually, but as always, Ethan dominated the conversation. "You've done it all, Ethan," Caleb Turner, one of Ethan's oldest friends, said with a grin as he took a bite of his burger. "Made millions, won every bet you've ever taken. But I bet you can't win this next one." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's the bet?" Caleb smiled slyly, clearly enjoying the moment. "I bet you can't marry a woman who has absolutely nothing to do with our world. I don't mean models or businesswomen. I mean someone really ordinary. Someone like that waitress over there." Ethan followed Caleb's gaze to a woman cleaning a table nearby. She was a McDonald's waitress named Amelia Miller, and from the way Caleb pointed at her, Ethan knew she was the one Caleb was referring to. Amelia was 28 years old and had been working at McDonald's for a while. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Chloe, and she worked hard to support her family. Ethan quickly observed her, noting that she was a quiet, hard-working woman who kept her life simple. To most people in Ethan's world, she would have been invisible, but for Caleb, she was the perfect challenge. "You want me to marry a waitress?" Ethan asked, his voice full of disbelief, though there was a hint of amusement. He couldn't believe what Caleb was asking him to do. "Yep," Caleb said with a chuckle. "I bet you can do it. Marry her, and I'll give you $2 million. No contracts, no tricks. Just a real marriage." Ethan paused for a moment, considering. The money wasn't a big deal to him. It was pocket change. But the challenge intrigued him. Ethan Harrison never turned down a bet, and the idea of winning this one was too tempting to resist. Amelia's life was so far removed from his own. She was nothing like the women he usually surrounded himself with. Women who were interested in luxury, business, and status. Amelia, with her simple, everyday life, seemed like the perfect person to win over. She was different, and that made her interesting. $2 million, huh? Ethan said, a smile spreading across his face. "This will be easy. Get the check ready, Caleb. I'm going to win this bet." His friends laughed, convinced they were witnessing the beginning of another one of Ethan's easy victories. But deep down, Ethan felt a surge of excitement. There was something about Amelia that felt different, and he liked challenges. He was determined to win, just as he always did. Ethan watched Amelia more closely as she cleaned tables. Her light brown hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she wore no noticeable makeup. There was something about her, something in her eyes, that intrigued him. She had a mixture of weariness and strength, a sense that she worked hard to keep everything in her life on track. Ethan was used to people fawning over him, but Amelia wasn't like that. She was serious, focused, and completely uninterested in what he could offer. Finally, Ethan decided to make his move. When Amelia came over to clear some empty cups from his table, he leaned forward with a confident smile. "Hey, Amelia," he said, "I don't think I've seen you serve me before. How about we grab a coffee sometime?" Amelia glanced at him briefly, her expression neutral. "I've been working here for months," she said. "You probably just didn't notice." Ethan chuckled. "Probably not," he said, shaking his head. "But that changes today. How about we grab coffee sometime? You must get a day off, right?" Amelia hesitated for a moment, then politely shook her head. "I'm working right now, Ethan." Ethan wasn't going to give up that easily. He smiled and tried again. I get it. Not now. But we could meet up when you're off work. It'll be a nice break for you. Amelia raised an eyebrow but didn't respond right away. She smiled politely, then walked away. Ethan felt a wave of frustration. She hadn't reacted the way he expected. Most women were charmed by a few words from him. But Amelia wasn't like the others. There was something about her resistance that only made him want to try harder. For the first time in a long time, Ethan was faced with a challenge that felt personal, and he liked it. As the days passed, Ethan kept showing up at McDonald's, hoping to catch Amelia when she was free. Each time he tried talking to her, she was polite but distant. He could tell she wasn't interested, but that only made him more determined to win her over. Amelia Miller wasn't like the other women he was used to. She didn't care about his wealth, his success, or his power. That made her all the more intriguing to Ethan. On the next Tuesday, Ethan returned to McDonald's again. He saw Amelia working, and again, she was efficient and professional. As she came to take his order, he tried once more. "Hey, Amelia," he said with a smile. "I thought you might expect to see me again." Amelia raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Didn't know you came here so often," she said, writing down his order. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Well, I think I'll start coming more often. Great service and all," he said, trying to sound casual. Amelia didn't seem impressed. She just nodded and turned to leave. Ethan stopped her again. "How about that coffee? Just a quick chat, nothing fancy. I'm not here to make your life harder." Amelia paused for a moment, clearly annoyed but trying to stay polite. She sighed, then said, "Look, Ethan, I'm really busy. My life doesn't leave room for casual meetups. I don't have time for that." Ethan understood that she was being sincere, but it didn't stop him from feeling frustrated. He needed to change his approach if he was going to get anywhere with Amelia. Instead of being playful or casual, he decided to try a more serious approach. "I understand," Ethan said softly. "I just wanted to get to know you better. I promise I'm not here to waste your time. You're not like the others, and I find that interesting." Amelia hesitated for a moment, and for the first time, Ethan saw her soften a little. She let out a small sigh and agreed. "All right, Ethan, but it'll be a quick coffee. I don't have time for anything more than that." Ethan smiled. That was the opening he needed. Later that day, they met at a nearby cafe. Amelia was still in her work uniform, and she seemed a little uncomfortable. Ethan, however, was completely at ease. They sat at a table in the back, away from other customers, and Ethan tried to make the conversation light. "So, Amelia," he began, "what's your life like? How long have you been working at McDonald's?" Amelia shrugged, her tone reserved. "A few years. It's how I support my daughter, Chloe. I work a lot, but it's what I can do for now." Ethan nodded. He was beginning to realize how different their lives were. For him, work was something he directed from an office. For Amelia, it was the way she supported her daughter, and it took up almost all of her time. "Do you ever have time for yourself?" Ethan asked, trying to steer the conversation into more personal territory. Amelia let out a humorless laugh. "Not much. When I'm not working, I'm with Chloe. She's my priority, and that takes up most of my time." Ethan told her a little about his life. "I'm the CEO of a tech company. I work a lot too, but it's a bit of a different lifestyle." Amelia nodded again, as if she already knew that. "I thought so. That's why I was surprised by your invitation. People like you don't usually mix with people like me." Ethan felt a little uncomfortable, but he tried to keep his composure. "Why do you say that? Do you think everyone is the same?" he asked, genuinely curious. Amelia didn't hesitate. "It's not that I think everyone's the same. I just find it hard to understand what a wealthy, successful man could want with someone like me. You could have anyone from your world. So, why me?" Ethan was caught off guard by her honesty. He didn't know how to explain himself without sounding like he was playing a game. Finally, he just said, "Maybe that's exactly what interests me about you, Amelia. You're not part of my world, and that's rare for me. Amelia studied him carefully for a few moments before finishing her coffee and standing up. Well, it was a quick coffee, she said. Just like I promised. Ethan smiled and stood up too. How about we do this again sometime? Maybe with a lighter conversation next time. Amelia thought for a moment, then nodded. Maybe. As Amelia walked out of the cafe, Ethan watched her leave. He realized that he had made a small amount of progress, but there was still a long way to go. He wasn't sure what had changed, but he felt something was different. Winning the bet still lingered in his mind. But the more he thought about Amelia, the more he started to care about her for reasons other than the challenge. Ethan kept visiting McDonald's, making sure to give Amelia space, but also trying to talk to her more each time. Little by little, she started to open up. However, despite his best efforts, Ethan knew he had to show her he was serious if he wanted to win her heart. This wasn't just about a bet anymore. He wanted Amelia to see him for who he really was, beyond the wealth and power he usually used to define himself. The more time they spent together, the more Ethan realized how much he valued Amelia, not for the challenge, but because of who she was. It was then that Ethan decided to change his approach. The stakes were no longer about winning money. They were about proving that he could be something more than just a CEO. Ethan sat nervously, his mind racing with thoughts of what he was about to say. He had never felt this unsure before, but he knew it was time to be honest with Amelia. She was sitting across from him, working on something at the table. Taking a deep breath, Ethan spoke. What if we take this seriously? Amelia looked up at him, puzzled, her brow furrowing. Take what seriously? She asked, not sure where this conversation was going. Ethan took another breath, knowing that now, being direct was his best chance. Marriage, he said quietly, though his voice held a note of certainty. Amelia blinked, unable to hide her surprise. She laughed involuntarily, as if it were a joke. Are you serious? I barely know you, she exclaimed. Ethan nodded, trying to stay calm. I know it sounds crazy, he admitted, but I feel like we have something special. Something I've never felt with anyone else before. Maybe it's because you're not from my world. But I see something real in you, Amelia. Someone who lives a life with purpose. Amelia shook her head, still in disbelief. You're really suggesting marriage with someone you hardly know? What kind of reality is that? Ethan paused for a moment, realizing that he had to explain himself better if he was going to make any sense of this. He couldn't back down now. I'm not joking, Amelia. I know I come from a very different world, and I know it sounds absurd, but I want to give you and Maya a better life. You deserve more than what you have right now. Amelia took a deep breath, torn between rejecting him outright and considering what he was offering. It was hard to believe that someone with his wealth and lifestyle could be genuinely interested in her. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw a sincerity she hadn't expected. I'm not asking for an answer right now, Ethan said, sensing her hesitation. Just think about it. I don't want to pressure you, but I believe we could make this work. Amelia sat in silence for a few moments, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. I'll think about it, she said, still confused but feeling a strange mix of curiosity and caution. Over the following days, Amelia couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's proposal. She questioned it from every angle. After all, Ethan was a man from a completely different world, a world she didn't understand. She was a single mother and a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. Her life revolved around Maya, her young daughter, and the thought of leaving her world behind felt both terrifying and exciting. But she had to admit, the idea of marrying him and what it could mean for Maya stirred something deep inside her. As unlikely as it seemed, this proposal could offer a future she could never provide on her own. A week later, Ethan showed up again at McDonald's, where Amelia worked. He waited for her to finish her shift. When she came out, he called her name, smiling with a mixture of confidence and nervousness. Amelia, he said, his voice filled with hope. Have you thought about what I asked? Amelia looked at him, her expression serious. Do you really think this could work? She asked, her voice filled with doubt. We're from completely different worlds. I'm a waitress with a young daughter. My life is about her and always will be. I'm not here for games. Ethan nodded, pulling out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. It wasn't too flashy, but it sparkled gently in the light of the street lamps. He knew anything too extravagant would intimidate her, so he chose this one, hoping it would show his sincerity. Amelia, I'm serious, Ethan said, holding the ring between his fingers. I want you to see this as a chance for us to build something together. We could give Maya a different kind of life. And if you say yes, I promise I will never let you down. Amelia's heart raced. She had never expected something like this, and it felt surreal. But when she looked at the ring, her thoughts turned to Maya and the possibility of a better future. Why me, Ethan? With all your money in your world, why would you choose me? She asked, still struggling to believe it. Ethan smiled, but there was a deep sincerity in his eyes. Because you're different. You're real. For the first time in my life, I see something that matters more than wealth and status. Amelia was silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling on her. She still couldn't quite believe it, but she knew she couldn't ignore the possibility of a better life for her daughter. I'll accept, for Maya's sake, she said softly, almost unsure of her own decision. But she made it, feeling a sense of duty to her daughter above all else. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, a smile of relief spreading across his face. I promise, I'll make this worth it, he said. And for the first time, Amelia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The transition to Ethan's world was swift. Amelia and Maya moved into his mansion, a place so grand and luxurious that it took Amelia's breath away. The house had high ceilings, elegant furniture, and a cold, impersonal air to it. It felt like a palace, but to Amelia, it was nothing more than a place where she didn't quite belong. Ethan, though considerate, kept a careful distance. He seemed genuinely interested in making her feel at home, but his busy schedule, meetings, events, and responsibilities left little time for connection. For the first few days, Amelia felt like a visitor in a life that wasn't hers. One evening, during their first dinner together at the mansion, the differences between their worlds became painfully clear. They sat at a long dining table, with Ethan at the head and Amelia a few seats away. Maya sat between them, looking around the room in awe. Do you like it here, Maya? Ethan asked, trying to make conversation. Maya nodded shyly. Yes, it's big, like a princess's house. Amelia smiled at her daughter, trying to keep her grounded. It sure is, sweetie. But remember, this is just a place to live. Our life is still the same. Ethan picked up on the caution in Amelia's words and tried to lighten the mood with a childhood story about getting lost in one of his family's properties. But Amelia didn't seem particularly interested. She was still adjusting, unsure of how to fit into this new world. As the weeks passed, Amelia began to understand more about Ethan's life. He was always working, surrounded by influential people, while she spent most of her time caring for Maya and settling into the house. Ethan made an effort to spend time with them, but the gap between their lives remained noticeable. He asked about Maya's school and tried to participate in family activities, but Amelia still felt the distance between them. One afternoon, as Amelia was helping Maya with her homework, Ethan walked into the living room and watched them. For the first time, he saw the simple, natural bond between mother and daughter. He felt a strange yearning to be a part of it. Need any help? He asked awkwardly. Amelia looked up at him, surprised. You know anything about school homework? Ethan laughed and shook his head. Maybe not, but I can try. Maya giggled at his mistakes, and for the first time, Amelia felt a small connection between them. Ethan, who had been so focused on business and status, was now sharing a simple moment with her and Maya. It felt like a small bridge between their worlds. However, despite the small progress, Amelia remained skeptical. She knew that their marriage had started in an unconventional way, and there was still a lot left unsaid between them. One night, as they sat together in bed, Amelia sighed, looking at Ethan. "I think we need to understand what we're doing here. We're not a normal couple. We don't have a story together. And even though you've been thoughtful, I still feel like we're trying to fit into something that might not work." Ethan sat beside her, looking at her sincerely. "I understand, Amelia. I'm trying to figure this out too, but I want this to work. I want us to build something real here, even if it didn't start the way we expected." Amelia studied him carefully, unsure whether she could trust his words. But despite her doubts, she decided to give him and their marriage a chance. "I think we can try," she said with a sigh. "But I need you to be honest with me, Ethan. If this isn't real, if this is just an experiment, I'd rather end it now." Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "It's real, Amelia. I promise." That night, for the first time in a long while, Amelia felt a small sense of peace. Things weren't perfect, but maybe, just maybe, they could figure it out together. Ethan had been acting differently lately, and his friends, especially Caleb, started to notice. One evening, as they were having dinner together, Caleb decided to confront Ethan about it. "Ethan, what's going on with you?" Caleb asked, eyeing him with concern. "You've been pulling away from everyone. You're changing, and I don't understand why." Ethan paused and took a deep breath, feeling a mix of frustration and exhaustion. He had been hearing this from everyone, and it was starting to get on his nerves. "I think I'm realizing what really matters," he replied, his voice calm but firm. Caleb looked at him with a disbelieving laugh. "Is this all because of that bet you made? I thought that was just a joke. You're acting like this is serious." Ethan's irritation grew. "It's not a joke anymore, Caleb. It's not just about the bet anymore. I want things to work with Amelia." His voice was sharp as he spoke, and he could tell that Caleb wasn't taking him seriously. "So, it's serious then?" Caleb asked, his tone softer, but still confused. "Yes, it's serious," Ethan said, his frustration building. "And if you can't understand that, maybe you should focus on your own life instead of worrying about mine." Caleb was silent for a moment, studying Ethan carefully. Finally, he nodded and said nothing more. Ethan had made up his mind that night. He couldn't keep going on with the same friendships that felt shallow to him anymore. Severing ties with people like Caleb was hard, but it felt like the last step in leaving behind the old, superficial life he had been living. Now, he was determined to find something real with Amelia and Chloe. When Ethan returned home later that evening, Amelia noticed that he seemed troubled. They sat down together in the living room, and Amelia could tell something was on his mind. She patiently waited as Ethan took his time to speak. Eventually, he opened up. "I feel like I'm drifting away from everyone," Ethan confessed. "It's like everything I used to care about, everything that seemed important, is slipping away from me." Amelia placed her hand over his, offering comfort. "Maybe you're just finding something more real," she suggested gently. "Sometimes we have to get lost in order to find ourselves." Her words gave Ethan the reassurance he needed. He felt like Amelia truly understood him in a way no one else did. He had spent so much of his life focused on things that didn't matter. But now, with Amelia and Chloe, he realized that he had found something more meaningful. He was ready to leave the past behind and move forward with them. For the first time, he knew he wanted a real, fulfilling life. In the months that followed, Ethan began to change even more. He spent more time at home, enjoying simple moments and activities that he had once overlooked. He stopped hanging out with the people who had been part of his old social circles. To him, those people didn't matter anymore. They were part of a life he no longer wanted. But one morning, something happened that brought his past rushing back. Ethan was working from his home office, reviewing some contracts when he stumbled upon an old document. It was a news article about a factory that his company had acquired years ago and then shut down. Ethan remembered the decision well. At the time, he had ordered the factory's closure to save money and increase profits. To him, it had been a business move, just another decision on a long list of things to do. But as he read through the article again, a cold realization hit him. The factory Ethan had shut down was located in Amelia's hometown. Ethan's heart sank as he pieced together the impact of his actions. He hadn't thought about the real people behind the factory closures. All he had seen were numbers and figures on a spreadsheet. He hadn't considered that people would lose their jobs, that entire families would be affected. Amelia had been one of those people. The decision he made years ago had directly impacted her life. It was the reason she had struggled, the reason she had to work at McDonald's to support Chloe. Ethan felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He spent the rest of the day unable to focus on anything else. The weight of his discovery haunted him. How could he tell Amelia the truth? How could he admit that he, in part, had caused her suffering? For days, Ethan wrestled with his guilt. He couldn't hide from it forever, though. Finally, one quiet evening, Ethan decided to tell Amelia everything. After Chloe had gone to bed, they sat together in the living room, and Ethan began to speak. "Amelia, there's something I need to tell you," Ethan started, his voice shaky. "Something from my past that I've never told you about." Amelia looked at him, her face curious but calm. "What is it, Ethan?" Ethan swallowed hard, trying to gather his thoughts. "Do you remember the factory where you used to work? The one that was shut down?" Amelia's expression changed, and Ethan could see the sadness in her eyes as she recalled that difficult time. "Yes, I remember it. It was a hard time for me, especially when I was pregnant with Chloe," she said softly. Ethan looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "Amelia, I was the one who ordered the factory to close," he confessed. His voice was low, filled with shame. Amelia's face froze. She blinked, as though trying to process what he had just said. "You did that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan nodded, his own voice almost breaking. "Yes. At the time, it was just a business decision. I didn't think about how it would affect real people. But I see now that I hurt you, and I'm so sorry for that." Amelia stepped back, her eyes filling with tears. "So everything we've been through, all the struggles I had to face, it was because of you?" Her voice cracked with pain and disbelief. "You're the reason I ended up working at McDonald's and raising Chloe on my own?" Ethan tried to reach out, but Amelia pulled away. "I didn't know. I never meant for this to happen. I want to make it right." Amelia shook her head bitterly. "How can I forgive you, Ethan? You've already taken so much from me. You made my life harder, and now you want me to just forget all of it." Ethan felt like his heart was shattering as he heard her words. He deserved her anger, he knew. He had caused her so much pain. Amelia turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving Ethan alone in the living room. He couldn't shake the guilt that weighed him down. The next day, Amelia didn't speak much. She tried to hide her feelings from Chloe, but Ethan could see that the hurt in her eyes wasn't going away. Ethan knew he had to do more than just say sorry. He needed to show Amelia that he had changed, that he was truly sorry for what he had done. Ethan made a decision. He traveled to the town where the factory had been to speak with the people who had lost their jobs because of his decision. It was painful to hear their stories, but he knew he had to face the consequences of his actions. After hearing their struggles, Ethan decided to set up a support fund for the former employees. He wanted to help them rebuild their lives and create new opportunities. He knew it wouldn't erase the past, but it was a start. When Ethan returned home, Amelia was still distant, but Ethan was determined. One evening, he sat down with her and said, "Amelia, I know you're still angry with me, but I need to tell you what I've been doing. I've been trying to make things right. I went to the town where the factory was. I spoke to the people who lost their jobs. I'm creating a fund to help them." Amelia folded her arms, her eyes skeptical. "Money won't fix what you did, Ethan. You can't just throw money at everything." Ethan nodded. "I know it won't, but it's the first step. I want to show you that I'm truly sorry and that I'm committed to making things right." Amelia was quiet, studying him. For the first time, she saw a glimpse of real remorse in his eyes. As much as she still felt angry and hurt, she couldn't ignore his effort to change. That night, Amelia went to bed with mixed feelings. She wasn't ready to forgive him, but a part of her saw that he was truly trying. Ethan knew it would take time to rebuild their trust, but he was determined to do whatever it took to prove that he had changed and to show Amelia that he cared about her and Chloe. Ethan and Amelia had spent some time together, and Amelia started to see a different side of Ethan. He wasn't the same man who had closed a factory, but the past was still a big problem. The next day, Amelia decided to talk to him again. She found him in his office, looking at some notes. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew she needed answers. "Ethan," she said, trying to get his attention, "I heard what you said about the support fund. I know you're trying to make things right, but it's still hard for me to understand." Ethan looked at her with a serious face. "Amelia, I know I might never deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'll do whatever it takes. I'm willing to change my life if that's what it takes to make things right between us." Amelia didn't say anything for a moment. She thought about his words. Even though she was still hurt, she saw a different Ethan in front of her now. Maybe he was really changing. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Ethan," Amelia said softly, "but maybe we can see what happens." Ethan felt hope. He knew the road would be hard and that it would take time to fix everything. He was ready to do whatever it took to prove he deserved a second chance. Before they could say more, the door opened suddenly, and Caleb walked in with his usual sarcastic grin. "So, you two are still here, cozy together," Caleb said. Ethan frowned. "Caleb, now is not a good time," but Caleb didn't seem to care. He looked at Amelia and said, "So, Amelia, did Ethan tell you about the big bet?" Amelia was confused. She looked at Ethan, who suddenly looked nervous. "Caleb, stop," Ethan said, trying to stop him. But Caleb kept talking. "Ethan and I bet a lot of money, $2 million, actually, on whether he could marry you. Didn't he tell you? What a shame. I thought you two were a real couple." Amelia felt shocked and hurt. She stepped back, staring at Ethan, waiting for him to deny it. But Ethan stayed quiet, and that told Amelia everything she needed to know. "Ethan, is that true?" she asked, her voice shaking. Ethan didn't know what to say. "At first, it was a bet," he said, his voice weak. "But I started to care about you. I really started to care." Amelia couldn't believe it. "First, you ruined my life with the factory, and now I find out our marriage was just a bet," she said, tears starting to fall. Amelia turned and walked out, feeling like her heart had been broken. Ethan felt like he had lost everything all at once because of his lies. Amelia walked out of the mansion, her heart in pieces. Caleb's words made everything worse. It felt like her whole life with Ethan had been a lie. Not only had he ruined her past, but now she knew that everything, even their marriage, was just a game to him. Ethan stood there, watching as Amelia left. He wanted to run after her and tell her he had changed, that the bet didn't matter anymore. But he knew it was too late. He couldn't fix things with just words. In the days that followed, Amelia ignored Ethan's calls. She needed time to think about everything. She didn't know if she could ever trust him again. Every nice thing Ethan had done felt fake, like part of a plan. Ethan was so sad. His mansion, once a place of pride, now felt empty. Every time he left a message for Amelia, it went unanswered. He knew that saying sorry wasn't enough. He needed to show her he was serious about changing. So, Ethan made a big decision. He decided to sell his company, the place where everything started, including the decision to close the factory. He knew he couldn't be with Amelia if he was still connected to that life. It was time to show her he was willing to start fresh. He met with investors and made the deal to sell the company, and when it was done, he was just Ethan, no company, no power, just himself. He went to a friend's house where Amelia and Maya were staying. He was nervous but determined. When Amelia opened the door, he said, "I know you might not believe me, but I want to tell you something important." Amelia looked at him, confused. "I sold the company," Ethan said. "I'm not part of it anymore. It's gone. I know this doesn't fix what I did, but I want you to know that I'm doing this because I want to be with you and Maya. I want to build something real, even if it means starting from nothing." Amelia was surprised. She didn't know what to think. "But Ethan," she said, "do you think selling everything makes up for the lies?" Ethan looked down, feeling the weight of her words. "I know this doesn't change everything I did," he said softly, "but I realize I can't be with you if I'm still part of that old life. Today, my priority is you and Maya. I want to be a better man, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Amelia didn't say anything for a while. She looked at him closely, still unsure, but she could see that he was trying. "It's going to take time, Ethan," she said. "I need time to trust you again." Ethan nodded. "I understand. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes." Amelia agreed to think about it. She didn't know if she could ever forget the hurt he caused, but she also saw that Ethan was trying to change. She knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild their trust, but maybe there was a chance. In the weeks that followed, Ethan kept trying. He gave Amelia and Maya space but showed them he cared. He did small things to help, like getting them what they needed and checking in on them. Amelia noticed that Ethan was trying to be better. She still had doubts, but part of her started to hope that maybe he was changing for Real. One day, Ethan invited Amelia and Maya to a park. He planned a simple picnic with food he made himself, something he knew Amelia would like. When they got there, Amelia was surprised at how simple everything was, much different from the fancy things Ethan used to do. Seeing this side of Ethan made her feel lighter, and for a moment, she almost forgot about the pain. As they sat on a bench, watching Maya play, Ethan smiled. "Thank you for coming," he said. Amelia looked at him and felt a little hope for the first time in a long while. Ethan nodded his head slowly, his eyes focused on Chloe as she played with her toys in the back seat. He wasn't looking at Amelia, but he knew she was listening carefully. He finally spoke, his voice softer than usual. "You know, I realized something important. Having all that money, that big company, all that power, none of it made me happy," he admitted, turning slightly to face her. "You and Chloe, you two brought something real into my life. I was chasing the wrong things. I thought I needed all that wealth and success, but now I see that I don't need any of it to be happy. I need you. I need Chloe. I need the simple things in life that make it worth living." Amelia was quiet for a moment, thinking about what he said. His words felt different, not like the usual things Ethan would say. This was new. She had always known Ethan as the man who loved his company, his power, and his money. He had built his life around those things, and it hurt Amelia when he chose them over her and Chloe. But now, hearing him speak so honestly, it was hard to ignore the change she could see in him. She had always wished for Ethan to see what really mattered, and maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand. Her heart felt a little lighter. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the usual weight of anger and disappointment when she thought about him. Ethan was right. Chloe and Amelia were all that mattered, and if he was truly changing, maybe there was a chance for them after all. Ethan smiled at her carefully, then turned back to look at Chloe, who was giggling as she played with her doll. Amelia watched them both for a moment, seeing how Ethan looked at her daughter with such tenderness. It made Amelia's heart flutter just a little. She couldn't remember the last time Ethan had looked at Chloe with that kind of love. It was real, it was genuine, and it made her feel hopeful. Hopeful that things could be different. Suddenly, Ethan suggested, "Let's play a guessing game. We can make Chloe laugh." He didn't wait for an answer, but immediately started making silly faces to make Chloe giggle. Amelia couldn't help but smile as she watched the two of them. Chloe's laughter filled the car, bright and carefree, just like a child's laughter should be. She had missed hearing Chloe laugh like that, especially when it was because of Ethan. He used to be so focused on business and himself, but now he was giving Chloe his full attention, trying to make her happy. Amelia could see the effort Ethan was putting in, and it meant so much to her. It wasn't just for show. Ethan was really trying to connect with Chloe, to be there for her, to be the father she had always needed. As the game continued, Amelia felt something inside her start to soften. It was like a wall she didn't even realize she'd built around her heart was slowly beginning to crack. The Ethan she had known, the arrogant, selfish man, seemed to be fading away. In his place was a new Ethan, one who was kind, thoughtful, and most importantly, someone who was trying to be a good father and a good man. Amelia could see that he was finally learning what really mattered in life, and that made her feel hopeful for the future. When the day was over, and they were ready to head home, Chloe was asleep in the back seat, her little head resting against the window. Ethan drove calmly, his hands on the wheel, his eyes on the road. The car was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine. Ethan glanced over at Amelia, a small, sincere smile on his face. "I know that just one day isn't going to fix everything," he said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "But I really hope this can be the start of something better between us. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I want to make things right. I want to be the man you and Chloe deserve." Amelia took a deep breath, thinking carefully about what to say. She felt a mix of emotions inside her. There was still a part of her that was hurt, a part that was afraid to trust again. But another part of her, the part that saw how much Ethan had changed, wanted to believe him. She turned to look at him, her eyes steady. "I can't promise it'll be easy," she said softly. "But if you keep showing me that you're changing, if you keep being honest and caring like you are now, maybe one day I can trust you again." Ethan's face softened and he nodded, a feeling of relief washing over him. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but hearing Amelia say that there was hope made him feel like there was still a chance for them. It wasn't just words. She meant it, and that meant everything to him. He knew that it would take time, that he had to prove himself, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Amelia hadn't completely forgiven him yet, but there was still hope. There was still a chance for their family. If this story made you think or gave you a new perspective, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our future videos. Let's keep sharing thought-provoking stories and learning from life's lessons together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.